It is a victory Monday here on Believe in Steelers. Pittsburgh comes away with a 21-14 victory over the New England Patriots, their first win in Foxborough in 17 years, and only their second win this century in New England. And now Pittsburgh is 2-1 with a golden opportunity in front of them to start the season 5-1. Welcome into Believe in Steelers, everybody. Jarrett Bailey here with you. As always, we are presented by FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. And the Steelers, despite their best efforts, come away with a win over the Patriots. They are 2-1. We're going to recap everything that went down on Sunday, what went well, what didn't go well, and hand out some winners and losers as well. So if you are listening as a podcast, please be sure to leave a review, leave a comment, follow along with the podcast to keep us raising up all those podcast charts. And if you're watching on the Believe YouTube channel, please be sure to subscribe. So let's start as we always do. I try to start with the good. But this week I want to start with getting the bad out of the way because, I've let it marinate for on Sunday night. Now we're, recording this just ahead of 1:00 on Monday. So I'm going to do my hardest not to sound like such a miserable bastard because I know I have the tendency to do that. I think I'm a pretty good realist when it comes to being a Steelers fan. And the patterns that we've seen over the past few years with this team, you can kind of predict how things go. And through 3 weeks, Mike Tomlin said it himself, by the way, coming into this week that, 2's a pattern? What's 3 then, Mike? Because a lot of the same issues remain when it comes to what the Steelers don't do well. And that is offensively, they play scared. Started off really well. They had a screen pass to DK Metcalf on the first drive. Then they fed Jaylen Warren 6 straight times, got it into the red zone. Kenny Gainwell had a touchdown. They get a fumble. Aaron throws career touchdown pass number 509 to DK Metcalf. It's 14-0, feeling great. 2 touchdowns on 2 drives. Defense forces a turnover. Hey, this might be a belt-to-ass game, which would be lovely. The Steelers don't get a lot of those. And then, inevitably, things go south, and the game remains competitive. In large part because the third down defense is still really bad. The Patriots did whatever they wanted on third down. By my count, there was 4 third-and-long conversions, and there was a 5th third down. It was 3rd and 12. The Patriots got 11 on, and then on the next play, they went for it on 4th and 1 and got an easy conversion. New England in this game had 2 drives of 15 plays or more because they're able to easily convert on third down. They were 6 of 13 on third down for the day, but 4 of those came on 3rd and long. For the Steelers, you'd much rather have teams in 3rd and short because at least then it looks like you can defend that. 3rd and long, they sit back, they give up free real estate in the middle of the field, and teams continue to feast on it. Happened against the Jets, happened against Seahawks, happened again against the Patriots. And when you just refuse to make any sort of changes, that's coaching malpractice at that point. Now, look, they were bailed out because the defense made a lot of splash plays. 5 takeaways any week, you should win that game. 4 fumble recoveries, an interception from Brandon Echols. But that's the biggest problem. That's the biggest problem with Mike Tomlin. His biggest issue is his style of winning, the way he wants to win, just isn't sustainable. You're not going to have 5 takeaways every week. You can't just let teams put together 15 plays, 17-play drive to get into the red zone and then just bank on, okay, Brandon Echols will just get a pick here, so it doesn't matter. And even so, when they had 5 takeaways, the Patriots were still in position to tie the game with under a minute left. It just so happens that Demario Douglas ran backwards and Brandon Echols made the tackle on 4th down to end the game. But the Patriots were still in position to win in spite of the Steelers having 5 takeaways because of the way that they play defense and because they play scared offensively. I can't even blame Arthur Smith anymore, because when the same issues are evident through 3 different offensive coordinators, 3 different offensive lineups, like 5 different quarterbacks, like that's not on Arthur Smith right now. And I'm not saying he's perfect. I'm not saying he's Kyle Shanahan. But the way in which the Steelers want to win goes all the way back to Mike Tomlin. And his fingerprints are clearly on what the Steelers are doing offensively, which is short, dinky, playing scared, not testing defenses downfield. And again, I'm not saying that Arthur Smith is the, second coming when it comes to offensive play calling. But look at what he did in Atlanta with subpar quarterback play. Like, the Falcons were at least still competitive and putting up relatively good offensive numbers. Despite the criticism that he got for doing some, bad things. And go back to Tennessee. He had Ryan Tannehill as a guy who was a 33 touchdown quarterback. And their offense was very much, hey, play action, launch it. That should be what the Steelers do a lot right now, because they have one of the best deep ball throwers of all time. They got a good deep ball receiver in DK Metcalf. Got a good running back in Jalen Warren, who I know isn't Derrick Henry, and that's, kind of a little bit of an asterisk here. But the point being that Arthur Smith has called good offenses before. And it didn't matter if it was Randy Fichtner, Matt Canada, or now Art. It didn't matter if it was Mitch Trubisky, Mason Rudolph, Kenny Pickett, Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, now Aaron Rodgers. The same issues are still prevalent offensively. And when you go through 6 different quarterbacks, when you go through 3 different offensive coordinators, when you go through multiple different offensive lineups, and the same problems are there, that's on the head coach. So there's my weekly Mike Tomlin rant. It'll happen again next week, I'm sure, because the same things will still happen. Steelers are a very predictable team. Mike Tomlin's a very predictable head coach. So I'm sure we're going to be having the same conversation next week. But my goodness, man. Aaron Rodgers was tied with Jake Browning for air yards per target this week. 4.6 air yards per target. Just not going to get the job done. You got to throw the ball downfield. But if it was up to Mike Tomlin, they'd win every game 12-11, as our good friend of the show, Dave Damashek, loves to say. So I can't wait to live in a post-Mike Tomlin world. And one day the Steelers will have a very prolific offense. It'll probably be after I'm dead, but one day it'll come. That being said, Aaron Rodgers threw a beautiful back shoulder touchdown to Calvin Austin to win the game. He gives them a lot more in those clutch moments than what they had last year with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. And that was ultimately the difference maker, is 5 takeaways and Aaron Rodgers being Aaron Rodgers in the final 2 minutes of the game. So that's, the irritated part of me that I wasn't going to be able to cage. I'm sure a lot of people felt the same way. And, I see fans tweeting at me and saying, dude, they won the game. Can't you just enjoy a win? Man, I really wish I could just do that. I really do. I'd love to. But when I've seen the same thing over and over and over and over and over again for the past 4 years, and I know where this train's going, I know how this movie ends, it's hard for me to just sit back and enjoy something when the same issues are prevalent and it feels like this team is heading in a similar direction that the team in 2024 did, the team in 2023 did, the team in 2022 did, So I'm not trying to be a downer. We're all fans at the end of the day. But I would love to root for a team that clearly has a higher ceiling, a higher outlook, and that could play deep into January. Right now, I just don't think that team's there. Now for the good. Nick Herbig. Good Lord, what a player. He had 8 pressures in this game. How good is that? That's what Micah Parsons did week 2 against Washington when he lived in their backfield against the Commanders on Thursday night in week 2. 8 pressures for Nick Herbig. And a sack. And a forced fumble. Dude was everywhere. I don't care what happens when Alex Highsmith gets healthy. He shouldn't start over Nick Herbig. I've been saying this for over a year now. Herbig is much more of a much better pass rusher, but he's also gotten better against the run. He's much more of a spark plug for the Steelers. He makes far more splash plays than Highsmith ever has. I fully expect, and I know I sound like a broken record because I've been saying this since I started hosting this show. And going back to like this past summer, like, you know, if you followed me in terms of what I've did with my Steelers coverage before taking over as the host of this show, I've said since March, hey, I would bet they're going to trade Alex Highsmith before 2026 starts. Before the 2026 season, he'll be playing elsewhere. They'll pay Herbig. Highsmith is owed almost no money next year. You know, the vast majority of the money they paid him on this extension is already done. They'll trade him somewhere as part of a package to move up and get a quarterback that they want. So bookmark it here. That's what I expect to happen. And it's not that Alex Highsmith is a bad player, but Herbig is just, it's evident that he's just better. There's no reason why Highsmith should take snaps away from Herbig, even when he does get healthy. That's another thing. He's injury prone. Missed 7 games last year. Gonna miss, 4 to 6 this year. Keep Herbig on the field opposite of Watt. You saw what happened this week. Watt had 2 sacks and a forced fumble. Herbig had 8 pressures, a sack and a forced fumble. Keep both of them on the field as often as possible. Cam Hayward had a nice game. Got a paw on the pick that Brandon Echols had in the end zone, forced the fumble that Ramondre Stevenson had at the goal line. Really liked what I saw there from Cam. By far his best performance of the year. By the way, the other defensive tackle, how about the NFL debut for Derek Harmon? I actually want to get his stats pulled up here because I want to, get them exactly right, because I was just incredibly impressed with what he did. Only played 34 snaps, but in those snaps, 2 run stops against 9 runs, 3 pressures and a sack. And that's making your debut count. So great stuff from Derek Harmon, and was also very evident he was helping in the run game. Steelers' run defense was much better in week 3. Not to say it was perfect, but it was better. And that was good to see from number 99 having a really good debut. Jabril Peppers, the former Patriot, who the Steelers signed after Deshaun Elliott went down with an injury. He comes in, has 6 tackles, recovers the fumble that TJ Watt forced on Antonio Gibson. And he had, recovered the fumble, ran to the opposing end zone, to show Patriots fans like, hey, remember me? And he talked after the game. He told our buddy Nick Farabaugh, like, I needed that. And so very nice to see Jabril Peppers have an impact play against his former team. I classified Aaron Rodgers as a winner in this game. Like I said, they started off hot. 2 touchdowns in the first 2 drives, and then they went very dormant for 2 quarters. But a really nice back shoulder throw to Calvin Austin, a really nice fade ball to DK Metcalf. Right now, Aaron Rodgers is on pace for 40 touchdown passes, which is pretty crazy. He's got 7 through 3 games, which if you do the math there, and I'm pretty sure I'm doing it right, I wasn't a calculus major, but if you divide 7 by 3, that gives you about 2 1/3 touchdown passes. You multiply that by 17, and you get 39.6 touchdowns. So he's on pace for anywhere between 34 to 40 touchdowns on the year. Do I think he'll get there? Probably not. Could he get to 30? I think so. We saw Ben throw 30, I think 33 the year after he came back from the elbow. Yeah, 2020. I want to say his TD to interception ratio is 33 to 10. And you know what? Just to check my work, I'll look it up. But I'm pretty sure that's what it was. Is 33 to 10. The touchdown interception ratio in 2020, just off the top of my noggin here. Ben, 33 to 10. Look at me. So is it possible that Aaron can do that? Yes, absolutely. especially because that year Ben wasn't throwing the ball downfield. They just had a really good quick game. Ben was winning a lot of stuff pre-snap. Aaron's going to win a lot of stuff pre-snap because he sees the field very well. He's one of the smartest quarterbacks ever. But Aaron still has a little bit of zip on the arm, and we saw that week 2, especially with that just seed to Pat Freiermuth, which I'm still boggled that he dropped. So can Aaron get to 30? I think so. He's well on his way to doing it. Big test, though, Minnesota this coming week with Brian Flores, who the Steelers know very well at defensive coordinator. So I'll be looking forward to seeing what that matchup looks like, and we'll talk about that later on in the week leading up to the game. So I was really happy to see Aaron doing what he does in the final couple minutes of the game. Back shoulder throw to Calvin Austin. Calvin Austin, by the way, man, is really emerging as a good number 2 receiver. You can't put him out wide because he's too small. But in terms of what the Steelers are going to ask him to do, he's done really well so far. 8 catches, averaging almost 16 yards per catch, 2 touchdowns. Both of them have been incredibly clutch, by the way. Both of them go-ahead touchdowns in the waning minutes of games. But if you look what Calvin Austin is on pace for right now, receptions-wise, he's currently on pace for about 45 catches on the year. If you want to do yards real quick, so 45 catches for 714 yards. And what would end up being, if he keeps this pace going, 11 touchdowns. Don't think he's going to get there. But we've seen guys have a similar stat line. Rashad Bateman in Baltimore last year had 45 catches and 9 of them were touchdowns. Like a fifth of his catches were scores. Obviously a different player. Rashad Bateman is much bigger, much more of a prototypical number 2. Calvin Austin's more of a scat slot guy that you send on deep routes, but he's fit that role very well. So do I think the Steelers are still going to look to add another receiver? If one becomes available, certainly. The Saints are 0-3 right now. They called about Chris Olave in the offseason. If the Saints are going to start just truly tanking, which they probably should after that performance against the Seahawks on Sunday, then maybe they reach out again about Chris Olave and see if they can get him. In which case, you have DK and Chris Olave on the outside with Calvin Austin in the slot. It's pretty good lineup to have when you're in 11 personnel. So we'll see if anything comes of that. We'll continue recapping week 3 for the Steelers right after this word from ZipRecruiter. This episode of Believe in Steelers is brought to you by ZipRecruiter. Finding great candidates to hire can be very difficult. You get too many resumes and not enough candidates with the right skills or experience. But not with ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter finds amazing candidates for you and fast. And right now you can try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/audio. ZipRecruiter's smart technology identifies top talent for your roles quickly. Immediately after you post your job, ZipRecruiter's powerful matching technology starts finding candidates that are qualified for your job right away. Ditch the other hiring sites and let ZipRecruiter find what you're looking for, that needle in the haystack. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Try it for free at this exclusive web address, ZipRecruiter.com/audio. Again, that's ZipRecruiter.com/audio. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. All right, welcome back into Believe in Steelers, everybody. We are powered by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. The Steelers, by the way, opening as 2.5-point dogs to the Vikings in week 4. Something to keep an eye on if you are planning to bet on that game to see where the line goes throughout the week. We'll touch on that later on in the week as well. Wanted to touch on some other good things because I know I spent 8 minutes bashing, the things that we saw. And I don't want to be that guy. I really don't. I would love to come on here and talk about everything that went well. C'est la vie. Everything's going to be all right. It's just very hard for me to do that. Just off of what we've seen from the past few years. So forgive me, if I get a little bit too doom and gloom sometimes. I know that can be a little bit discouraging for people and might be a little bit of a turnoff when it comes to listening to me. Believe me, I'm aware of it. I'm very aware of it. It's like a guy who knows he drinks too much. He's trying, and I'm trying. So some other good things from the game. I thought Jaylen Warren, early on in the game especially, was tearing it up. He finished with 81 scrimmage yards. You know what really pissed me off? And it shouldn't, but maybe it should. On the first drive, Jaylen Warren runs them into the red zone. 6 times they fed him in a row after the DK Metcalf catch and run. They give him the ball 6 straight times. Only to what? They bring in their personal binky, Kenneth Gainwell, for some reason, and then he gets the touchdown. I don't have anything personally against Kenneth Gainwell. What I'm annoyed with is Mike Tomlin and Arthur Smith, seemingly having one guy a year that they insist on getting offensive snaps to. Last year it was Cordero Patterson. Now it's Kenneth Gainwell. Now, if you look at the splits, Jaylen Warren had the highest splits in terms of carries in his career when it comes to the percentage of carries that he got. It was 86% of carries. It was, a high number. So they fed Jaylen Warren, but that was his touchdown, and they should have kept him on the field to get it. So that was kind of annoying. Am I annoyed because I also bet Jaylen Warren anytime touchdown? Yeah, a little bit. Guy marches you down the field and he's like, all right, thanks, Jaylen. Kenny, get on in there. All right, dude, whatever. Just dumb. I'm also going to say this. This is going to revert back to kind of the negative side of things, so forgive me again. And I don't mean any sort of slander towards this guy. I really don't. Because he seems like a great guy. Does a lot for the community. But what does Pat Freiermuth do that garners him making over $12 million a year? Week 2, he dropped a dime from Aaron Rodgers that would have set them up for a potential touchdown. Now, I know they had a penalty on that play anyway, but still, if Pat catches that ball, they're set up inside the 30 or the 20. And if we look at the stats so far for Freiermuth, what are they paying him for? He's got 7 catches so far in the year. He had 1 catch for 6 yards against the Patriots. And on a scramble drill, where Rodgers breaks to the left, Freiermuth's cutting across, keeps running to the sideline. Aaron expects him to sit in a dead spot in the zone for what would have been a first down. Freiermuth keeps running, and the ball ends up behind him. And Aaron gets visibly pissed because, sit down so I can throw you this ball. He doesn't run block, at least not well. He's not a game changer in the passing game. What the hell are they paying him that much for? And again, seems like an awesome dude. Does a lot in the community. Whenever, Pickens got traded, he was scheduled to have a football camp in Pittsburgh. He didn't do it after he got traded. Freiermuth stepped up and hosted it. That's the kind of guy he is. As a dude, A+. As a player, though, man, we got to call it like it is. He's just not worth what they're paying him. Right now, he's the 3rd best tight end on the roster, and that's not hyperbole. Darnell gives them more as a run blocker and as a red zone threat. Jonnu Smith gives them more as a receiver. And Pat Freiermuth is making $12 million a year. That's a problem. Now, to balance that out with another good thing, I thought Cole Holcomb played really well. He played more snaps than Peyton Wilson did. They gave him more of a starting role. He had 6 tackles, multiple run stops. So the run game was noticeably better defensively. I think a lot of that had to do with Derek Harmon being back, but also the linebacker play was more complimentary. Patrick Queen had a few run stops as well, but Cole Holcomb being there, a more veteran presence than Peyton Wilson, I thought is what helped the run game get better overall. So 2 bigger additions, one via just more snaps for Cole Holcomb, the other being the debut of Derek Harmon. The run defense overall much better, and I think Cole Holcomb deserved a shout out for that. And while it was, we talked last week that the Seattle loss was very infuriating because it was just like self-inflicted wounds in a game that they should have won. This was a win where it was infuriating because they should have lost. But it's much better to be a little bit annoyed after a win than it is to be, optimistic after a loss, I guess. But the same things that have been a problem continue to be a problem. That's my biggest concern, is that they're overcoming themselves. And this style of winning, I've said it so many times before, relying on mistakes from the other team, relying on splash plays from your defense, that can work against, the mediocre to not great teams in the NFL. Now, I picked New England to be a playoff team, but it's still a young quarterback, a group of skill position guys that don't have any stars there. And, when facing a team like that, it reminds me a lot of the game against Green Bay in 2023. Up-and-coming team with an up-and-coming quarterback that they caught at the right time. And you can take advantage of that with turnovers and splash plays and use that as your formula to win. When Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills come to Pittsburgh later on in the season, you're not going to be able to do that. You're going to have to score points because Allen and the Bills are going to score on whoever the hell they want to, especially this defense that hasn't looked great through 3 weeks. And Allen and the Bills have dominated the Steelers in the last 2 times that they faced off. They had that big 38-3 win back in, 2022? And then in the playoff game at the end of the 2023 season. That's not a matchup the Steelers want because they don't have a quarterback, or at least they haven't, that can go toe-to-toe with Allen. Aaron Rodgers, obviously 4-time MVP. If they allow him to try to go toe-for-toe with Allen, then maybe he can keep it up for a little bit. I just don't have the faith that they're going to allow that to happen. So that's been my biggest frustration, is that the style of winning isn't something that can be sustained against the great teams in the NFL. And that's why there's been such a low ceiling on the Steelers. But again, the positive is that they're 2-1. They have a chance to be 3-1. They'll face Carson Wentz and the Vikings next week in Ireland, and a chance to go 3-1 into the bye. And again, we'll be back to preview that as well as discuss more of what the Steelers have done in week 3 and what they should do in week 4. Have a couple player highlights in terms of guys I wanted to do a little bit more deep dives into as well. I'm going to do some write-ups for that at Behind the Steel Curtain, but also talk about it on here. So thank you guys so much for tuning in to the Week 3 recap. Again, if you're watching this on the Believe YouTube channel, please be sure to subscribe. If you are listening as a podcast, be sure to leave a review, leave a comment, follow the show, keep pushing it up the podcast charts. Appreciate you guys very much. We'll be back later on the week on Believe in Steelers.